The country of Great Britain is a railway country, with a history that spans the course of 150 years, with many stories to tell. These are the stories of the men, women and steam locomotives who worked and served under the almighty power which was British Railways. A time of innovation, motivation and change for the men, women, their work, and the steam locomotives and their services. These are the stories of the locomotives and their crews who worked hard under the threat of their lines closing, their jobs changing, and simply replacement, whilst keeping their spirits high through their adventures. These are the stories of the locomotives of British Railways. Episode 2. Sir Kay's Misjudgement. Some people think that the Southern Railway didn't have many successes, when in fact, it had a lot of successes. In fact, today in British Railways days, the Southern region continues that success. Yet despite the successes and advancements, passengers are always impressed about how the Southern Railway keeps their trains on time. Especially in the days of British Railways, where every single train has to run exactly on time to keep up the image of nationalisation. So timekeeping is a big factor into the running of the Southern region, so the majority of trains must always be on time. But there can always be delays now and then. At Brighton, Nicholas had got used to his new surroundings, and had got to know a lot of the engines quite well, whilst creating quite a repertoire. So the engines were most dismayed when Nicholas had to go back to his home for a few days. But despite his absence, the engines still managed to keep the trains running efficiently, especially Johnnie.
I appreciate the advice that old timer gave me. It makes me feel like I'm a much better engine than I think I am. He really does know how to bring out the best of you, especially when it comes to doing your job.
Well, that's just spectacular, my dear fellow engine, but Nicholas doesn't exactly know how to keep up to speed nowadays. You should realise that when he came into the Southern Railways from the LWSR, he was not trying to live in the past.
Oh, don't be like that, Sir Kay. Nicholas is the wisest of us all, the wisest engine I've ever met. And he is...
Yes, it is. I'm sure he's a really useful engine or whatever, but times are changing. If there's one thing that has always been apparent when it comes to the Southern Railway, that is timekeeping. Any delay will cause absolute despair for the passengers. Trust me when I say it, young Johnnie. Older is not necessarily better.
Well, that's just typical of an engine like him.
Rafferty had a right to say that particular remark about this particular engine, because this is Sir Kay. Sir Kay is a very proud engine, with a very large presence in the shed, as he is one of the Southern Railway's N15s, who are better known as King Arthurs. And his class were designed and built for one purpose: express trains. And in Sir Kay's mind, being an express engine means being on time constantly, which is why he has built up quite a knack for being efficient. As he was being filled up with water, Johnny rolled over next to the N15. The Pacific wasn't done with him yet when it comes to defending an engine like Nicholas.
So, Kay, it's one thing to question the authenticity of an old engine's advice, but I think what you said about him isn't fair. What you're doing is blocking him out completely. At the very least, when I met him, I tried to see if his opinions were justified, even when I didn't realise it. Yes, our opinions did clash a tad. It all managed to work themselves out in the end, though. Now we've been getting along very well, and I'm just saying that if you give him a chance, maybe you will learn something. He has a lot to offer, you know.
Sir Kay stared at the Battle of Britain for a while and considered what he was about to say next. But of course things went downhill from here.
Well, that's just spectacular that you consider Nicholas to be a fine engine. I'm sure he is, but once again, 222 Squadron, you misinterpret my entire opinions and arguments.
What exactly is that then? And I'd rather be called Johnny?
Well, first of all, 222 Squadron is the name that is on your nameplate, as my name is on my nameplate. So I will call you whatever is on your nameplate. And secondly, it's not about Nicholas as an engine, and it's not necessarily about his opinions either. No. What this is about is to do with age. Unlike you, who was built in retrospect rather recently, me and Nicholas were built only 2 decades apart. That is why I consider our experiences and expertise do not differ all that much. Which is why I'm so strict when it comes to timekeeping. It is why I make sure I revise the timetable so I am on time with the times. If you can take my meaning, my young engine.
Maybe that's not necessarily the case. I mean, not about the whole timekeeping aspect. I don't think you should compare your experiences with Nicholas, and you shouldn't have this attitude towards him or timekeeping. You see, Nicholas is an engine who has experience that a lot of us engines don't have, including you. Like you said, it's a 2 whole decades between you two, and in that 20 years, Nicholas is bound to have picked up more experience than you, and don't forget, at one point I thought that my opinions were more significant than his, and I was foolish to think that, so maybe you shouldn't make the same mistake.
My 222 Squadron, you are a rather clever engine, cleverer than most engines your age. And it's good that you recognise certain things in order to keep your railway going, and you're also willing to learn and take in new things. But you're going to have to take my word for it that express engines are the head front of the tracks, and we will always run on time anticipating if things go wrong. You run up against a signal that says stop, and you wait there for quite some time, and when it eventually goes down, you do your best to make up for lost time whilst being efficient, smooth and look fine as you roll down the line until finally pulling in majestically into the station. Couple that up to the experiences I've had over the years, it means I cannot make a mistake. Bear that in mind, Johnny, and you won't make mistakes like you did weeks ago. And in that respect, you should consider yourself lucky that your chain valve gear wasn't too badly damaged if you listen to my advice. Think you can prevent something worse from happening?
Just then Sir Kay heard the sound of his filler cap slamming shut. His fireman climbed back down, and then he puffed towards the station to go and collect his train. Rafferty and Johnny knowingly gave a sigh of relief and a whoosh of steam.
You're not gonna listen to him, are you?
Nope.
I reckon as much. But in some respects you can see his point. But I guess he's just too stuck up in his own way to see what could go wrong. Just like you were, in fact.
Yeah, that's true, Rafferty. He is wise in his own way, I guess, but there's no denying that engine can be difficult. It's almost like if the men in the workshop put me and Nicholas together into one boiler. Actually, come to think about it, that wouldn't be a pretty sight. But I've learned from my mistakes. If any of my own experiences are anything to go by, I reckon Sir Kay will make some kind of mistake as a result of his strict arrogance.
Rafferty smiled at his friend. Now the 2 engines were prepared for whatever was to come next from the King Arthur class. A few hours later, Sir Kay was thundering down the line from London Bridge, keeping right up to schedule and right on time. The N15 was feeling very proud of himself as he pulled into the station where Wainwright's C-Class 060 was waiting at the other platform.
Hello there, Sir Kay.
Oh, hello there, Shirley. I suppose I'd better ask, how is one of our resident goods engines?
Well, if I'm brutally honest, my king rather peachy.
Oh, really? And why is that?
because I've recently realised that one of our resident express engines thinks that he is the best timekeeper on the whole damn railway.
Beg your pardon, my dear engine. Where on earth did you get this from? Because I can tell you it is not true.
It is most certainly true. Rafferty told me, and I think that it's one of the most baffling things I heard. How could you compare yourself to someone who is 20 years older than you? Probably more than 20 years old. It's like you're Mr. Perfect or something. Well, let me tell you, something shows me there are a lot of engines on this railway, and I bet you every single one of them has made a mistake in this day and age.
That's a fair assumption. But now let me tell you something. I'm an engine who's always lived by principles. Principles that, as an express engine, I need to abide to. Because I abide to these, I am able to keep time. Which is something that you are not going to do if you keep chatting away like this. And speaking of time, I need to get going in about 25 seconds. So if you'd excuse me, I need to prepare to depart.
Just then the guard blew his whistle and gave Sir Kay the right of way. He blew his whistle loudly, and with much panting and whooshing, Sir Kay smoothly departed towards his destination.
Yep, he's gonna be really annoyed with himself by the time he reaches the other end of the line.
But Shirley was only half right, because Sir Kay was already annoyed by what she had said, and now Sir Kay was getting distracted, not only by what Shirley had said, but also by everyone else around him.
Sir Kay, steady on. You're riding too roughly.
Oh my goodness!
But watching his pace and the smoothness of his ride wasn't the only thing the N15 had to worry about. Because as he was rolling down the line, he couldn't stand the fact that an engine like Shirley could say such things about him in that manner. And Sir Kay was so distracted by this that his driver discovered that Sir Kay was starting to slow down. So he decided to pick up speed.
Anthony, what are you bloody doing? No need to increase speed, we are running perfectly on time.
No, you're not. You're not running fast enough. And if you don't, we will be late. And we know how much timekeeping means to you.
Nonsense! If you are aware that I am such an excellent timekeeper, then you will know that we are running on time and we are running smoothly. We are fine.
But he was so blindly distracted by his previous conversation with Shirley, he didn't realise it until it was too late. As he passed through the next station, Sir Kay, in the midst of his distraction, spotted the station clock. Seeing what time it was, he suddenly realised his misjudgment. Sir Kay was horrified, but he had to pass through Burgess Hill Station at 4:35, when he should have passed through the station 8 minutes beforehand. Sir Kay was running late.
I can't afford to be late. I can't afford to be late. I can't afford to be late. I can't afford to be late.
Slow down, old boy. We can't go any faster than this. We have to stay within the restricted speed limits of British Railways.
Well, that's just spectacular. This is all.
Sir Kay said no more as he carried on at restricted speed towards Brighton. At Brighton, Johnnie had returned from Southampton after briefly taking an ocean liner express to the docks, as one of the standard 5s had failed. Suddenly, he spotted Sir Kay rolling past, looking frantic as he pulled into the station. Johnnie was quite amused by this sight he had just seen.
Well, this should be an interesting story to hear.
Soon Sir Kay rolled straight into the shed and slowly drew to a standstill. The engines round the yard chuckled at the sight of a rather embarrassed N15.
So, what happened to you then, Sir Kay? A bit later than usual, I see.
Sir Kay said nothing. Just then, Rafferty spoke up from the corner of the shed.
What's with Sir Kay, Johnny?
Well, that is a good question, Rafferty. It's the strangest thing. I was talking to this engine earlier on today, and he said that engines are the head front of the tracks and need to be on time. Always.
Is that right?
Yes, it is. He must be a very proud engine. Must be quite the timekeeper.
Then what's the matter with this head front on the track then?
Well, that's just the thing. He just rolled into the station like only 10 minutes ago, and it turns out he has made quite the misjudgment and was late.
All the engines laughed, but Sakei still said nothing, because he was aware of his misjudgment and was embarrassed. Later on that night, Shirley came back to the sheds and told both Johnnie and Rafferty what exactly happened, and what she had said to him at the station. And after Johnnie had listened to everything that the C-Class had to say, he went over to the sheds and rolled alongside Sakei, and was rather sympathetic.
You don't have to say anything, my friend, because I do understand why you were feeling embarrassed. You had too many thoughts going on in your head, and being the engine that you are, you were trying to balance that whilst trying to run an efficient train. However, I can see both sides of the argument. Maybe Shirley shouldn't have been so aggressive and rude like she was, but yet again, you did deserve it. After Rafferty told her about what you said to me earlier, I guess you probably needed a good telling off. But I also guess that any engine with your sort of attitude can make mistakes like that. And yes, everyone makes mistakes. Even you, mate. You shouldn't have been so dependent on your timekeeping skills because you got too distracted. You then made a mistake when you didn't even realise it. Well, I'm only speculating. I don't necessarily know if I'm right or wrong, but just remember, Sakei, tomorrow is a new day. And because it's a new day, you can learn from your past experiences to try and make sure you don't make that same mistake again. And once you make one mistake, you'll never make that mistake again. I hope I was helpful.
Johnnie,
Yep, that's my name.
thank you. That was rather reassuring. But I do say tomorrow is a new day working under the banner of British Railways. So it is best if we get some sleep. That would be spectacular. There's a good chat. Sleep well, 222 Squadron.
Sleep well, Sakei.
As their crews took them down for the night, the two engines started to fall asleep under the nice moonlit sky. Rafferty watched them from afar, with a broad smile on his face, knowing that these two engines would be friends until the end. But how long is it until the end? Rafferty thought to himself, as something was at the back of the tank engine's mind. But in the meantime, he could be content, as the King Arthur and the Battle of Britain will work hard, because at the end of the day, they are all at the head front of the tracks.